Thank you, Representative Lynch. The House will come to order. Our very own Representative Mike Lynch is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance today. Mr. Gregorio, please call the roll.
Representatives Amabile, Arndt, Bacon, Baisley, Benavidez, Burnett,
Here.
Byrd, Bockenfeld, Bradfield. Representative Bradfield is excused. Caraveo, Carver, Catlin, Cutter, Doherty, Duran. Representative Duran. Oh my God. Escar. Exum. Representative Exum is excused. Froelich.
Here.
Geithner. Gonzalez Gutierrez. Gray. Hanks. Herod. Holtorf. Hooten.
Here.
Jackson.
Here.
Judah. Kennedy. Kip. Larson. Fontaine.
Here.
Luck. Lynch. McCluskey. McCormick. McKean. McLaughlin.
Present.
Michelson Janae. Mollica. Neville. Ortiz. Pelton. Representative Pelton is excused. Pico. Ransom. Rich. Ricks. Representative Ricks.
Present.
Roberts. Sandridge. Sirota. Snyder. Representative Snyder is excused. Soper.
He'll just be late.
Sullivan. Tipper.
Here.
Titone.
Here.
Valdez A. Valdez D. Van Beber. Van Winkle.
Here.
Weissman. Will. Williams.
Here.
Woodrow. Woog. Young. And Mr. Speaker.
With 61 present for excuse, we have a quorum. Representative Amabile.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, this is your last chance to boo at me. I move that the Journal of Thursday, February 18th, 2021, be dispensed with and approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
Members, it is Friday. That is a proper motion. The motion that is before you is the approval of the journal corrected by the Chief Clerk. All those in favor say aye. Oh, no, that was not very good. All those opposed say no.
No!
Now it is Friday. That was the best one of the week. However, the ayes do have it, and the motion passes. Okay. We are to announcements and introductions. Just wanted to correct the record. There is no rule about announcements and introductions, so I was wrong in regards to Representative Bockenfeld yesterday, and I already apologized to him about that. But there is customs and practices, and we talked about just trying to minimize anything in announcements and introductions that's going to poke the eye of anyone on the other side of the aisle. So with that, we have 2 tributes today. One on frontline workers and one on to recognize former Representative Val Vigil. Those are tributes always fall under announcements and introductions because I know we haven't done any yet this year. And so sometimes we start with them. Is that what you would like to do, Madam Majority Leader? Great. Great.
I need the minority leader down here quickly.
Say that again?
I need the minority leader with me for my tribute.
Great. Minority Leader, well, I think he's talking. So we will start with the tribute on frontline and essential workers, and I will recognize Majority Leader Esgar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We ask that this tribute to recognize frontline and essential workers be read, if you don't mind, sir.
The Senate and the House of Representatives convened in the 73rd General Assembly hereby recognizes frontline and essential workers. The Senate and House of Representatives of the Colorado General Assembly wish to acknowledge the hard work of frontline and essential workers throughout the COVID-19 crisis. Healthcare professionals, first responders, educators, in-home health caregivers, public utility workers, and other essential workers from a vast number of industries across the state have steadfastly performed duties that are vital to the health, safety, and well-being of all Coloradans. Despite the increased risk of exposure to the virus, they have bravely ensured the continuity of life-sustaining services amidst over 400,000 cases of COVID-19 in Colorado. Grocery store and pharmacy clerks, fast food and restaurant workers, public transit employees, gas station attendants, postal workers, and trucking and transport industry workers have kept our supply chains of food and medicine running and have had to quickly adapt to uncertain working conditions while proving essential services. Factory workers have labored every single day to ensure food reaches our tables. Healthcare workers have fought on the front lines against COVID-19, saving lives and preventing the spread of the virus. Our first responders, including police officers, firefighters, emergency medical technicians, and our National Guard and military members have continued to protect and serve Colorado. Educators have kept up the important work of teaching and fostering the development of our youth despite countless hurdles and uncertainty. We wish to extend our sincerest thanks and deepest appreciation to all essential frontline workers who have stepped up, persevered, and helped our state combat the virus and its secondary effects head-on. We are eternally grateful for the continued service of all the countless nameless heroes who have kept our state running throughout this devastating year. On request of Senate President Leroy Garcia, House Majority Leader Danae Esgar, House Minority Leader Hugh McKean, and Senator Cleve Simpson, given this 19th day of February 2021, State Capitol, Denver, Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Gregorio. Mr. Minority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Our lives are incredibly different than they were a year ago today. In fact, we were kind of in the last normal weeks of 2020 a year ago today. And I'm not sure that any of us really took time to think about how all the things that we need get to us, how all the people who we need help us, and how normal lives run only with a lot of hands. There's a wonderful essay called I Pencil, and it's about how do you make a pencil. Nobody knows how to make a whole pencil. People know how to cut the wood, and they know how to mine the graphite, and they know how to do all those things. That's what it takes. We could not have made it through the last year without every single person, every single company, every single service doing what they do, sometimes in the face of risk of infection. I remember going through a King Soopers last year and thinking people are stocking these shelves while we're all very concerned about how close we are and what's going on. And yet they come and do that. and don't ask for a big thanks. They come and just do their work. This is that thanks. This is that recognition of just what it takes for us to live our lives.
Majority Leader Esgar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Minority Leader, for joining me on this tribute, because as we all know, this is a Colorado issue. This is a person issue. I think exactly what you said, this is the thanks that we can give, but I actually hope that this sets the tone for the rest of the session, and we start digging in deeper about how we can actually really repay all of these frontline workers for the work that they have done while many of us have remained safely in our homes, worked from home most of the time. They didn't have that opportunity or that choice. They had to keep life going for us. Many of you know my wife is a registered nurse. She doesn't work in the hospital, but she works at a clinic with very sick patients, trying to keep them out of the hospital and keep them from getting COVID. She alone has been exposed 4 different times this last year. Luckily, every single time her test came back negative and we were safe. There's many frontline workers who have actually contracted COVID just by doing their job, by protecting others and trying to keep others safe. So this isn't enough. I'm very proud of us for coming together in both the House and the Senate, Republicans and Democrats, to say thank you. And I hope if they ever see this, they know how deeply we hold the gratitude for the work that they have done. But I hope that we continue to work this session to make sure we're taking care of them and all of Colorado. So thank you for your time today, and happy Friday.
Thank you, Madam Majority Leader and Mr. Minority Leader, for that tribute. It was very important. We have another tribute to recognize former Representative Val Vigil. So with that, I will recognize Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's some other members joining us, the members of the Latino Caucus, as well as the Adams County delegation of legislators are the sponsors of this bill, of this tribute. And we wanted to do this tribute because Val Vigil was one of us. So I ask that the tribute be read out loud.
State of Colorado, in memoriam, the House of Representatives convened in the 73rd General Assembly hereby extends sincerest condolences and expressions of sympathy to the Vigil family on the passing of Valentin Val Vigil. Representative Val Vigil was a dedicated public servant who loved his family and his country with a passion. Representative Vigil was elected to the 72nd, 63rd, 63rd, 64th, and 65th General Assemblies, where he represented his fellow citizens with honor and dignity. During his tenure in the House, he served with distinction as chair of the Finance Committee and as a member of the Appropriations, Education, Information and Technology, and State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. Representative Vigil sponsored many pieces of legislation. He is best remembered for his brave and prescient bill to grant in-state tuition to college students brought to our state as babies and young children as their parents sought a better life for them. Although unsuccessful, Vigil coached and cheered from outside the hallowed Capitol halls as the bill was eventually passed. Representative Vigil continued his service as an engaged citizen, serving on the Thornton City Council, including serving as Mayor Pro Tem. The citizens of Colorado and the members of the House of Representatives express gratitude for his exemplary service to our great state and express heartfelt sympathy to his wife of many years, Annabelle, and his daughters Nadine and Valerie, and friends, and many colleagues of Val Vigil on their loss. His spirit will live on in those fortunate enough to have known him and the policies he enacted for all Coloradans. On request of Representatives Adrian Benavides, Alex Valdez, Serena Gonzalez-Gutierrez, Monica Duran, Yadira Caraveo, David Ortiz, Donald Valdez, Carrie Tipper, Daphne Michelson-Janae, Shannon Bird, Rod Bockenfeld, and Kyle Mullica, given this 19th day of February, 2021, State Capitol, Denver.
Thank you, Mr. Gregorio. Madam Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Val left us unexpectedly a couple of weeks ago, and his funeral services were held yesterday, and unfortunately, all of us weren't able to attend. But we know from knowing him how important he was not only to his family, but to all of us and to our community. When Val was in the legislature, he represented House District 32, the seat that I now hold. And Val was a great example to all of us that followed him. He was, as a former representative said, so down to earth. He has roots from New Mexico. He spoke Spanish, or more Spanglish, in his Manito way. And Manito is people from New Mexico that were forced to come up here because they lost their livelihood or their lands, and they have a certain kind of dialect of Spanish, which is different from most. But it is rooted in family and caring about people. I don't think Val ever met a stranger. And he went on to represent us well, and he was so active, and he was someone who you could always go to advise him. I met him, I knew of him, but I met him in 2005 when he was working on the in-state tuition bill for undocumented students who were brought here as babies and small children. And we worked really hard to try to get that through, and we weren't able to. The political will wasn't there. It wasn't until other universities stepped up and said, we can do this. And Val was the biggest cheerleader from the side. So we will miss him dearly. And the family could, obviously we couldn't have them here, but they will receive copies of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Representative Boggenfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I worked with Val when he was in the Thornton City Council. He was a member of the Denver Regional Council of Governments. And I can tell you at that time, I was the chairman of the Denver Regional Council of Governments, and I can tell you that he was well respected and admired by everyone on the council at that time. And he will be missed, and God rest your soul, Val. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bockenfeld. Representative Caraveo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Val ended up being my constituent. You know, as districts change, he went from District 32 to District 31. And I met him when I was running for office, and he quickly became a mentor. He was stern. He had a very strong sense of what was wrong and what was right. I remember the last meeting I had with him. We had a little disagreement, and by the end we were talking like nothing had ever happened, because that's the kind of guy he was. He told you what he thought was right, what he thought was wrong, and then he went right back to supporting you. There's a whole new generation of people in office that owe their careers to Val. You know, they say we stand on the shoulders of giants. And Val, although physically he was not a giant, was definitely a giant in spirit. I'm going to really miss him. He was definitely a father figure for a lot of us in Adams County, and he will be greatly missed.
Thank you, Representative Caraveo. Representative Molka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I grew up seeing Val Vigil signs all around our community. I grew up in the district that he represented. And I'll never forget the first time that I met Val. I was on Northglenn City Council. I'd just gotten elected, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I got to meet Val Vigil, which, you know, was a big deal growing up, never meeting him before, seeing his signs all over the place. And Val was so welcoming. He had to have seen, you know, the look in my eye that I had no idea what I was doing and how nervous I was. And he just brought me under his wing. He talked to me like he was a normal person. He didn't put himself on a pedestal. And that was just who Val was. Val was one of us. He was at everything that we did. He was at every meeting that you could imagine. And he loved his community, and he fought hard for his community. We were lucky to have Val in Adams County. We were lucky to have him be such a big part of our community, such a big part of what shaped our community. But most importantly, I think we're all lucky that Val was a friend, and we're going to miss him.
Thanks, Representative Molka. Representative Valdez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, Val was a unique individual, and I remember the first time I met him, it was through Adams State University alumni And he kept telling me, you know what, education is everything. Keep learning. He was a unique individual in all aspects, and my sympathies and prayers are to him and to the family. Que te vaya con Dios. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Valdez. Seeing no further discussion on this tribute, thank you all very much. Our thoughts are with the Vigil family, and we thank Val for his service to the state. Further announcements and introductions this morning. Representative Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today is the 448th Friday since my son Alex was murdered in the Aurora Theater massacre, along with Michaela Medic and 10 others. Sunday was the 3-year anniversary of the Parkland massacre, where 17 died and the youth movement previously unseen in this country started. If you believe either of those events were a hoax, I will remind you that I have Alex's crime scene photos right here that you and I can look at for proof that those things actually happened. You might have seen the reports recently about the first year's effect of the passage of House Bill 1177, the Red Flag Law. What you didn't see was anyone having their mint-in-box John Wayne commemorative rifle taken away from them. You didn't read about wild animals climbing through farmhouse windows and taking children from their bed. And the flag of Venezuela doesn't fly here in the chamber. What did happen is that 113 petitions were filed, far below the estimate of then Majority Leader Garnett. And thank you again, Mr. Speaker. In the 20 years that the red flag laws have been in effect across our country, history tells us that for every 11 petitions filed, we save one life. That means here in Colorado, 10 people were able to sit with their families this previous holiday season because of the passage of this legislation. 10 may not be a very big number to you, but I can assure you that it means plenty to those families who don't have to endure another year and another empty chair around their Christmas dinner table like my family has endured the last 8 years. I'm here to remind you daily what gun violence looks like. Whether you listen or not, I will continue to come to this microphone and tell you about its impact. Thank you again, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Sullivan. And just a reminder on announcements and introductions, we want to be careful not to use it as an opportunity to push individual policies or, again, it's just, again, about announcing events that are coming up and introducing people that may be with you in the chamber. Representative Holtorf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, fellow colleagues. I will tell you that all of us have suffered loss in our lives, either at the hand of violence or at the hand of what we see as this virus. But here's the most important thing we must remember. Scripture tells us that when something is taken away from us, we must understand that maybe there is a time when God needs the spirit of those children to do something in heaven. Now, I have suffered loss in my life, but I have learned not to hold bitterly onto that loss and never let go. I would ask all of us to consider that as we hold on to, for whatever reason, that loss, let us not be vengeful, Let us not be mean-spirited. Let us not be callous, coarse, or divisive. Unfortunately, I continue to see this. If I took with me what I saw when I went and deployed to defend the Constitution of the United States, and I did, and many of us that have served come home and we are bitter, we are angry, we are vile, and we seek to destroy what we saw destroy our brothers and sisters. But let me tell you the most important lesson I learned, and I offer this to my fellow colleagues, particularly the one that just spoke, that you have to let go.
Representative Holtorf.
Yes, sir.
Let's just, again.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I will yield to the Speaker. Thank you for your leadership, sir.
Okay. One more time for the chamber. If we are going to use announcements and introductions, not for announcements and introductions, we won't have announcements and introductions. We must get back to principles and practices of how this chamber acts. We're not going to use the opportunity for announcements and introductions to go and talk about policy issues. There will be second reading and third reading and committees for all of that. Representative Byrd.
Hello, I'm just a bit shorter than everybody else. So, members, I just wanted to let you know that on Monday during Finance Committee meeting time, we had originally scheduled a presentation from the Metro Districts Education Coalition. We have had some scheduling challenges, so that presentation is now canceled, and we won't be having that, and that means that for Finance Committee members, you get some time off. So, good news.
Thank you, Representative Byrd. Representative Luck, and then we'll go to Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a friendly reminder to all of you that you are loved and amazing, worthy and adored, and I can't wait to see you again soon. Thanks.
Representative Weissman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And in the vein of announcements and introductions, I'm here again to talk about the Judiciary Committee. Members, if you look at the calendar, you'll notice we are starting to add bills for next week, the usual times, Tuesday and Wednesday. I'm going to be contacting members throughout the weekend and having Mr. Pogue add them to the calendar because things are necessarily moving quickly at this beginning phase. I will probably try to use email to just do a little extra communication to members of the committee so everybody has as much advance heads up as possible on what bills we will be hearing when. Won't necessarily do that every week, but I think it's a helpful additional thing at this point in addition to watching the calendar. So we'll get to work next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Weissman. Further announcements and introductions. Madam Majority Leader Eskar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I do have a few announcements before I let us go for the weekend. Once again, don't forget, Picture Day is next week. If you have not signed up with John in the back for a time, make sure you do so. The time slots are filling up, so make sure you get that taken care of. Also, I've been asked to remind you, many of you have not been checking your mailbox, your physical mailbox, not your inbox, your physical mailbox. They are overflowing, some of them. So please, if you have not checked your mailbox, have your aide run and check your mailbox and get that out of there for them. We would appreciate it. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stand in recess until later today.
Thank you, Majority Leader Eskar. You have heard the motion. Thanks, everybody, for a good week. We'll be at it again next week. The House will stand in recess until later today.